What's going on, everyone? It's another episode of the WVSports.com podcast. I'm Wesley Shoemaker, joined by, as always, the one and only Keenan Cummings. It was an underwhelming performance for the West Virginia Mountaineers on Wednesday afternoon evening as they fell to 16th seeded Colorado 67-60 in the second round of the Big 12 tournament. And Keenan, while this was only a quad 2 loss, it raises some level of questions heading into what will be a longer 4 days than this team had planned ahead of Selection Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, you look at all metrics right now, and this is a dangerous game to play because truly you never know what way the committee is going to go. But every bracket that I've seen, West Virginia's in the field. And this is a quad 2 loss. I know it feels so much worse because it was losing to a 16 seed and they had been bad and you'd already beaten them on their home floor. But this was still only a quad 2 loss. In total, West Virginia, I believe, is 10-13 in quad 1 and quad 2 games. They don't have a quad 3, don't have a quad 4 loss. So resume-wise, I'm not sure this is a backbreaker by any means, but it does at least leave some questions. I think the worst part of this is you go to 20-13 or 20-12 and lose to Houston 20-13, they're in, no questions asked. And they still might be anyways, because if you've seen anything in the past, the committee really hasn't put a lot of weight, on these games. Once teams are in, they're in, at least by most projections, but there's still that risk. And you kind of took everything out of your hands. And now I wrote about this in my post-game observations. Now all you can do is sit there and wait and see what happens. That's the worst part of this for West Virginia. And we'll get into the game and all the stuff that happened. But to close the season the way they did, winning 3 of 4, and really kind of cementing yourself as a potential NCAA tournament team, to have any doubt at all, even if it's just a little bit, is not where you want to be heading into Selection Sunday. And I personally think they're in. I've said that. Obviously Darren Reese thinks they're in. Most bracketologists out there, if by most, I mean I think every single bracket on Bracket Matrix has them in. But if they are in, let's just assume they are in, this probably did cost you at least a seed line, maybe 2.
Yeah, I think going to your bracket matrix, I can't speak right now. They are, as of today, the last 9 seed, so it's likely they at least get bumped to that 10 line. If you look
Which
at the
isn't the worst thing.
It's not. If you look at the teams that are on the 10 line, I think Vanderbilt, they just lost, I believe, to Texas. Baylor, they're playing in the Big 12 tournament. Arkansas, they won by 4 against South Carolina, so they will play again tomorrow. But so Vanderbilt, who is, I guess, 2 technical team numbers below you, they lost. So they are kind of falling where you fall at that point. Arkansas and Baylor could jump you. I bet that's likely, at least for Baylor. Arkansas, I'm not entirely sure. But you are in all 93 of 93 brackets posted on the Bracket Matrix website. You're still fine metrics-wise in terms of your own resume, but just the feel of it all, I think, is where there's a little bit of concern, just how it all happened. And how it happened, Keenan, is they were up 13 in the first half. They were up 6 at halftime. Then they were up 9 in the second half, and then Colorado went on a 15-0 run in like a 4.5-minute stretch where West Virginia could barely get the ball across half court, and it was just downhill from there. And so we know that this team is limited offensively, but I think for me the biggest thing is the lack of aggression from Javon Small in that second half. I mean, he was playing really well offensively in the first half, and then had 13 points at the break, and then everything just changed. He didn't really get going again until the final minute of the game when it was kind of just shooting up shots to shoot up shots. So that was the biggest thing for me, if you want to single out one thing, was the turnovers on that run and then Javon Small's lack of aggression on offense.
Yeah, that sequence with the turnovers was as poor as that was just terrible basketball. West Virginia had 7 consecutive possessions, 7, where they turned the ball over and didn't even get a shot up. I mean, that's how you blow a lead. They were up 46-39 at that point, and by the time that was done, they were down 6. And yeah, they woke up and fought a little bit down the stretch, got back into it, had a chance. Then they made some really bad mental mistakes again, a couple really bad fouls that weren't really necessary. Sent Colorado to the line. They hit free throws. You weren't able to make some shots down the stretch, and voila. But this team, it's really this simple, Wes. I mean, they struggle offensively. That's no secret. If Javon Small is not hitting shots, and someone else is not stepping up, which is obviously – this was not an Amani Hansberry game. This was not really a Jonathan Powell game. They didn't get that type of production, that second and third scorer that they need to have success. You can't allow a team to shoot 61% from the floor in the second half. You go back and look at some of West Virginia's losses this year. Arizona State's won. BYU's won. Teams shooting well over 50% in the second half. That cannot happen. Colorado absolutely took advantage of West Virginia in the post. They got the ball to the rim. They pretty much did exactly everything they needed to do on the offensive side, and West Virginia didn't show any resistance. This team is not going to win games if they cannot play good to not great defense because they just can't score enough. I mean, that's no secret. Everyone that watches, follows, has talked about this team knows that. And I don't think we're talking about that enough. I mean, everybody's kind of focused on what West Virginia didn't do on offense, but you can't allow teams, you can't be ushering teams to the basket. That's really what it felt like at times. Even when West Virginia was able to get kind of a lead there, they led by 9 before that horrible sequence of events. We'll just call it that, a horrible sequence of events. They led by 9. It felt like the game, I don't want to say it was over, but it felt like West Virginia had kind of seized control back after a difficult stretch. And then you just quite literally gave the game away because not only were you turning the ball over, you weren't getting stops on the other end. You allowed Colorado had 17 points off turnovers. 15 of those were in the second half. 15.
Yep.
That's the difference in the game. That's by far. I mean, that's more than the difference in the game. When you struggle to score, you can't allow teams to score easily. And that's exactly what they did. It was a frustrating performance. I think you could make an argument, and I thought Vernon brought up a pretty good point on the board about, the team kind of already booking their tickets and feeling like they were in the tournament. I think that played a role. I think anytime you kind of ease up a little bit plays a role, but they played really good basketball in the first half. I thought they came out and played really well.
Yeah, they came out of the gates really hot.
We've seen this story, Wes, how many times this year? This team comes out playing great. They hit a lull before halftime, allow a team to get back in the game, and then the second half cannot get stops and cannot score. We've seen it at least six.
It almost happened even on Saturday against UCF.
Exactly. This felt like that, but it kind of was the same thing. It's just West Virginia was able to get enough plays to hold on in that game. They weren't here. And I think the biggest concern, other than the obvious concern everyone is going to have about West Virginia being NCAA tournament bound, I think that's a valid concern. I'm not underlining that at all. I don't make the brackets. All I can do is go by the data that we're given. So I don't want people out there, trying to hunt me down if West Virginia doesn't make the tournament. But given everything we know compared to, I've done that bubble watch a couple times, looking at teams in the same region. West Virginia wasn't even on the bubble coming into this game, guys. They were safely in the field, safely. So I'm not sure a quadrant 2 loss knocks them out, but at least it gives people an excuse to say, hey, that was a really bad loss. Maybe we should think about it. And even thinking about it this time of the year is sad because I really do think Darren DeVries has done an excellent job this year with what he's been given. And this is kind of a sad note to go out on in the conference tournament, especially the way it laid out for you. Did I think this team was going to beat Houston? No, which that's a no. There's no way you can lose in that game. Nobody expects you to beat Houston, but, Colorado kind of laid it out on a silver platter for you. Beat a team that had 3 conference wins, coming into yesterday, and the 16 seed in the league for a chance to play the number 1 seed in kind of a only can help you type of game. And they lost that opportunity. And unfortunately, for as well as this team has played at times, inconsistency has been an issue, and it's been on both ends of the floor. There's a reason that Darren DeVries talks about defense almost every time, really, either good or bad, because that's the one constant this team can typically have. It's the one thing they can control. Yeah, they're going to miss some open shots. Yeah, they're going to go through some scoring walls. But look at the first half. They went through, I think they had 5-minute scoring drought in the first half and were able to increase the lead because you played good defense. That's kind of the story to me, really, when I look at this game. Just lost opportunities. And really, once things started rolling bad, I'm not a big body language type of guy. I think it's easy to read into that and be wrong, but it did seem like West Virginia the air was out of them at times once things started rolling the wrong way.
Yeah, I think that can go off to what Vernon said on the message board of they never really looked like they had that level of urgency, because I bet in the back of their minds they were like, you know what, if we can't finish this comeback or if we can't keep up with them, we're still okay. And I'm not sure that's the right mindset to have. I'm not saying it's the right or wrong mindset to have. If they believe they're safely in, they believe they're safely in. By all estimations, they should still be in. And I think on paper, when you just glance at the teams and the records, the loss is a lot worse than when you actually kind of break down the meaning of the loss. I mean, Colorado's a top 100 team in the net, and so that means this is
They're going to go up.
Loss. Yeah, and they're going to go up. And I mean, who knows? Maybe they shock the world and beat Houston tomorrow. And you know what I'm saying? So like, you just really never know with these things. But I think that is the biggest frustration for fans. I mean, just reading our message board and everything is like, West Virginia had the chance to fully control their destiny, and they took that away from themselves. And while they fully should still be in by all estimations, now you play the waiting game. And it's going to be a long couple of days between today's Wednesday night and Sunday night. It's 6:30 on Wednesday. Selection shows I think on like 6 on Sunday. So that's a long waiting game. But if you get in, you're going to be well rested no matter where you do end up, whether it's in Dayton in the first 4 or
which I think that's the one thing, the concern, Wes, that really, just from my point of view, if you drop down to the first 4 like that's a terrible loss for you.
But I don't know how you do though.
I don't think so either.
I don't know how you go from I get you.
I'm
because
just
then
saying
you
have to play all angles here, because we both are in agreement that West Virginia's in the tournament. We're both in agreement that they were safely in.
Yep.
Win or lose today. But you never truly know. There's always a team every year that, well, not every year, but most years that everybody feels is in the tournament, and for some reason they don't make it. So that's that cloud, whether true or not. And you have to realize, Appalachian fatalism, for a sense, like West Virginia fans are used to the things going up the wrong way. So there's going to be that hovering rain cloud of sorts until that bracket is announced. And knowing the way things play out for West Virginia, it'll be the last bracket. It'll be the last bracket down there on the 7-10 line or something. Then people will be flipping out. But hopefully, when you look at what they've done enough. And I think they have. Obviously, Darren DeVries does. And all resident bracketologists agree. We'll see tomorrow if it had any impact on the seed line and where people are projecting. I think you get concerned if for some reason people start backtracking. I don't see that happening because it's a conference.
I don't see it happening. I mean, after the UCF win, and I know we didn't podcast after it, but like just looking around social media, all these like people that really dive into the bracketology things, like this is their shtick.
They rubber stamped it.
They said West Virginia is now a lock to make March. And I mean, we both agreed. We both said if they go 2-0 last week, they're in, and they went 2-0 last week. And I know if you flash back to even, I think like a couple weeks ago or a month ago when we brought up this tournament, like, hey, you can only help yourself, you can't hurt yourself. And I think we're trying to find more trouble than maybe there is, but also you have to kind of search for that trouble because of the performance they put out there on the floor today.
And really, I mean, if you think about it, I think if they would have lost to TCU, let's just say TCU would have won that game, and that would have been a quad 2 loss too. Would people feel differently if it was TCU?
Probably just because they see the 9 next to their name instead of the 16.
That's what I'm saying. So, like, in terms of
that's why I think on paper, like when you just first glance at the box,
listen. I am not trying to sugarcoat this at all.
Yeah,
that was a terrible loss for West Virginia. Terrible in terms of the season and an opportunity. Is it a terrible? This is what I was saying on the message board earlier too. Is it terrible in terms of their actual resume and what it means to the resume? I don't necessarily agree if you want to use the net formula, but I don't make
probably to be determined, I guess, on how, because we don't know. Like that's what we're gonna be playing the guessing game. West Virginia's gonna be playing the guessing game between now. And
you at least got to clinch up a little bit, and you didn't have to do that coming into this game. So there is that. There's that cloud hanging out there. So we'll see. We'll see. but looking ahead, big picture, if West Virginia is playing in the tournament, they've got to find a way to, if they get a matchup with a team that has a good post player, they have to do a much better job than what they did today.
It probably starts with staying out of foul trouble if you're Imani Hansberry too, because Eduardo Andre tried his darndest, and you need that second big just to at least show some different looks, because when they're spreading you out offensively with Imani, it's a lot different than when they're kind of running that lob action straight to Andre.
This has the feel to me, at least in terms of like resume, to that West Virginia team a few years ago with Eric Stevenson, when a lot of people were really worried and really concerned that they weren't going to make, and they were safely in, even though everybody.
But they got that win that they won. They were in that 8-9 game way back when the Big 12 was like still a normal number of teams.
Yeah, I understand, but resume wise, like,
I get you.
We're still really concerned if they would make it, and they were safely in because everybody had projected them they were in. So that's what it kind of has that feel to me.
So that team was 6-13 in quad 1 games, and this team is 6-10. But that team is also 6-1 in quad 2 games, which I guess they hold the advantage there. But they were still, by that math, sub 500 in quad 1 and quad 2, and that's, I think, the biggest knock currently on West Virginia's resume is that they're sub 500 in the quad.
What was their overall record that season? Do you have it on hand?
Yeah, so overall record is they were 6-12, 18. They were 19-14.
That's what I thought.
One extra loss because they advanced.
I know it was very similar. And that year with Kevin Jones too, it was kind of similar. His senior year when they were, I think, 19-13. So, it's a situation. I think it's worth monitoring. We'll see what happens. Obviously, you hope West Virginia makes the tournament because you have a chance for redemption if you do. I don't think the NIT is what anybody would want to see or any other type of postseason deal. So that's where we're at. What I was saying, though, and I do think going back to your point about Javon Small, I will say this. The guy is excellent. It's hard to nitpick his game. But I do think at times he needs to be a little bit more aggressive. If West Virginia's going to win in March, they got to have him shooting the ball.
Be selfish.
That is no knock on anybody else on this team, but running your offense through Toby Okani, in late game situations is not what West Virginia needs to be doing. Even if it's difficult, even if you got two guys on you, just let it go. You have the best chance on this team of making shots.
I fully agree. I think I've kind of started to be on that train a little more. I think I kind of said something in early February of this. Javon's got to start playing take over a little bit and just be selfish. And it's okay. And I think if you're West Virginia, like, you live and die with him being selfish at times, especially when your season's on the line, which it will be going forward.
Yeah.
You got anything else?
Yeah, that's where we're at. I think, hold on, people. We'll see what happens. I think that they've done enough. We've already been through this, but
yeah,
I understand. Trust me, I understand the trepidation out there. It's bad to be entering Selection Sunday with any doubt. I get it. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we will see what happens. We will keep you posted on all fronts, basketball in terms of bracketology.
More football interviews tomorrow.
More football,
so we'll have all that.
Yeah. And then we will probably give a pre-Selection Sunday podcast on Saturday, if I had to guess. Touch base on football there as well. And I guess we'll give our predictions for what we think happens on Sunday evening and maybe go from there. But until next time, the Mountaineers are now in wait-and-see mode in terms of basketball, and football continues to march on. I think one more practice before they go on their spring break. So I'm Wesley Shoemaker, joined by Keenan Cummings. Keep it locked on our website, and this was another episode of the WVSports.com podcast.